Welcome to True Talk. This is your host, Samar Jarrah. My co-host, Ahmed, is still on vacation. I am live here in the studio. It's wonderful to be back in Tampa and in Florida and at WMNF. I'm so proud of all the people who work and volunteer at WMNF. I was following the news and so proud of all of you listeners who really prove that there is hope in this country when it comes to freedom of expression and freedom of media. You have no idea how important WMNF is, whether you agree with me and Ahmed or you do not, but our voices, I think, are important to be on the air. So thank you, all of you who have contributed and gave to WMNF. Today we have a very interesting show. At the beginning, after I play this song, and I'll explain to you this song, I'm going to be talking with our news director, Mr. Sean Canan. He is in the studio. He did a very interesting interview. It's a local story here in Tampa. He will tell us a little bit more about it, and he conducted an interview that we're going to be playing. It's about 12 minutes, so please stay tuned. And then at around 12:30, I'm going to be going all the way to Tunisia in the Mediterranean and talk to a Palestinian journalist to discuss the assassination of 5 journalists who work for Al Jazeera. Some of them do and some of them don't. We're going to be discussing that. How could this be happening really in the 21st century? But in honor of all those who were martyred in Palestine, let's listen to this song. It's called Shaheed by Muhammad Ja'far Ghandour, and it means martyr. This is True Talk on WMNF 88.5 FM.
جن الليل وداب الويل ورايح عالروضة يحكيك روح الروح وكل الجروح.
And welcome back to True Talk. You were listening to this song called Shaheed the Martyr. And with me in the studio is Sean Canan. Good to see you, Sean, and congratulations for a very successful fund drive that took only one day.
Yeah, that was such a wonderful expression from our listeners. So it was great to be a part of. And welcome back, Samar. It's so great to see your smiling face in the studios. So
thank you. Back. So good to be back. I want to know what's going on in Tampa. There is a story that you became aware of just yesterday?
Yeah, we found out about it yesterday morning, and so we're going to learn more about it right now. A political cartoonist at Creative Loafing is out of a job because of criticisms the paper got after it published his cartoon of a starving child in Gaza. If you'd like to see what this cartoon is all about, you can see it at WMNF.org. I spoke with Bob Whitmore yesterday. He says that even though the cartoon seems to be a political statement about the famine and war in Gaza, the corporate parent company of Creative Loafing said it considers it to be anti-Semitic. This is WMNF. I'm Sean Canan, and my guest is Bob Whitmore, who's a political cartoonist. He was recently fired by Creative Loafing, and we're going to find out why here in a moment. So, Bob, why don't you start by telling us Describe the cartoon in question. What does it look like for people who can't see the cartoon right now?
Good morning, Sean. Thanks a lot for having me on. I really appreciate it. The cartoon was in reference to the starvation that is happening to children in Gaza at the moment. It depicted a small child standing at one of the walls of Gaza. There's barbed wire at the top, strung across the top. And in the distance, the Israeli flag is fluttering. And then the caption says, "Wailing Wall." The child is crying out, "Please give me food." And that is it in a nutshell.
What was the reaction that you got from that cartoon, if you got any positive or negative reaction?
Well, the crux of the problem is initially the editors at Creative Loafing had absolutely no problem with it. I've gotten pushback on other cartoons, but they seemed fine. I got no reaction, and then it ran on that Thursday in Creative Loafing's August 1st edition. On the 5th, I got a call from Ray Roa, who is the editor at Creative Loafing, and he said that the corporate publisher had gotten 2 letters regarding the cartoon, and they claimed that it was anti-Semitic. The publisher agreed that it was anti-Semitic and insisted that I be fired that I lose my position at Creative Loafing.
What happened at that point?
Well, at that point, Ray and I started discussions, and I do want to be absolutely clear that Ray Roa is absolutely caught in the middle of all of this. The local publisher and the corporate publishers seem to take a position. Ray doesn't feel that it's anti-Semitic. And we started talking about the possibility of a suspension and a reprimand for me and maybe for Ray, as he had approved it. I can't speak for Ray, but there was the talk of for me, a suspension and a reprimand. They initially just wanted to completely let me go, but Ray really pushed back. And I actually in the beginning said, "Look, Ray, I don't want to get anybody in trouble, so I'll just resign." And he goes, "No, I want to make this work." And the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to make it work, just because it did smack of censorship, and it was something that, as time went by, I started feeling a little bit incensed about it. He went back to his publishers, asked them about the suspension. They said that they would wait to see what an apology letter might look like, the spirit of the apology letter that they wanted Ray to publish in Creative Loafing for the cartoon before they would consider whether or not I would be fired or I would be suspended or reprimanded or whatever. And then on the 11th, Ray got back to me and said, "Look, they want you gone, and they're not going to go with a suspension. They just want you out."
You are concerned that the fact that you are fired over this might mean that slur, that label of anti-Semitism might be attached to you because of this. So let's get to that label. Would you describe this cartoon as anti-Semitic?
No, I would not describe it as anti-Semitic by a lot of the definitions that I've seen. I want to dissect it for a minute, just for a second, Sean. The starving child, of course, saying, "Please give me food," and wailing that, which is what the intent was meant to be, was, of course, meant to represent the situation that's happening in Gaza, the children that are starving. The wall itself, of course, is the separation between Gaza and Israel, which I needed as a cartoonist. You only have a few seconds for somebody to get the cartoon, and I'm talking seconds. So I had to put that flag there, which is just the national flag of Israel, to represent the fact that there's a division between that child and Israel, and that division is a wall in Gaza, all right? the Wailing Wall caption was a metaphor. And, the Wailing Wall, the destruction of the Second Temple, was a horrible moment in Jewish history. And it's become a representation of hope, God's presence, sorrow. And I felt as if the metaphor was correct to depict the current wall between Israel and Gaza as a separation and a place for sorrow is very, very apparent considering what's going on right now in Gaza.
So what do you think the future holds? Do you have any hope that the publishers of Creative Loafing will change their mind or that this will spur a larger debate about censorship? What are your thoughts?
I did go to, I went to Ray soon after all of this. As soon as I heard that there was going to be the possibility of a apology letter printed by Creative Loafing, which is on hold right now. I wanted to make that clear that they are still in discussions after I spoke to Ray and I said, look, there's some defamation here because you approved this. The editors of Creative Loafing approved it. If they distance themselves from it, you can say all you want about, Bob's a nice guy. We like him a lot, but in the end, he's anti-Semitic, because if they distance themselves from that and they make it look like I'm standing alone, they're claiming the cartoon in hindsight was anti-Semitic, then that just completely paints me as an anti-Semite, which couldn't be farther from the truth. I actually had an Orthodox Jewish friend. I've gotten a lot of response on Facebook and from friends. And, he said, even though he does find the cartoon disturbing, which, creating some sort of, discussion about something is exactly what political cartoonists would do, he did not feel as if it was anti-Semitic. And I responded back that I felt it was just the Wailing Wall itself was the metaphor, as I said earlier. But right now, as it stands, there's a bit of a standoff. I am hoping for, and as much as I can, insisting upon reinstatement as the political cartoonist for Creative Loafing, which I think is an amazing liberal voice for the Tampa Bay area. And again, this isn't Ray. This is the corporate ownership of Creative Loafing that has insisted that this happen. In answer to your question, it is censorship, Sean. It's I got in touch with Cartoonist Rights, which is an organization that actually goes to bat for cartoonists that are censored, canceled, and sometimes imprisoned for the work that they do. And they are absolutely on my side on this and willing to escalate this a little bit more if in case there's any sort of defamation or if I am painted as an anti-Semite and sort of left flapping in the wind all along. So it is absolutely censorship. And it is incredibly unfortunate because I always thought that I might get in trouble. And as John Lewis says, make good trouble. But I never thought that it would be me against Creative Loafing. I always thought it would be Creative Loafing and Bob Whitmore against the world.
I don't know how far you want to go with this analogy, but is it, I think that people see Creative Loafing as an independent voice locally, but having this corporate control over what's happening, do you have anything that, from a media landscape or from an independence of media, anything to say about that?
Absolutely, because it was a surprise to me, Sean. I didn't realize that existed, and I want everybody to know that this has been an incredibly distressing situation, I believe, for Ray Roa, because Creative Loafing does have that reputation as independent media. They've gone to bat for LGBTQ people across the Bay Area. Ray and I, it was funny when WMNF was looking at the funding cuts, I didn't know that Ray's entire issue was going to be about WMNF, and I did a cartoon about the funding issue for WMNF, and we are in absolute complete lockstep in how we feel and what we think politically, and as far as where the community, what a community paper should do for the area that it is in. Creative Loafing has done so much good, and I am hurt to have this happen. And again, it isn't Ray. I am hurt to discover this behind the scenes situation that could silence a cartoonist that has been working for 3 years for Creative Loafing. I've done over 150 cartoons for Creative Loafing, and they got 2 letters for 1 cartoon, and that was it. And yes, to your point, we can't have that kind of corporate control over papers that are supposed to have a certain mission for our area, and Creative Loafing has that mission, as does that WMNF. I always saw WMNF and Creative Loafing as a partnership for getting the message out about LGBTQ rights, about Gaza, about injustice, and it was very surprising.
Now might be a good time for me to point out that Ray Roa, the local editor here at Tampa Creative Loafing, is a volunteer at WMNF and co-hosts a radio show called The Skinny, which airs at 11 o'clock on Fridays. Well, Bob Whitmore, I really appreciate you coming on WMNF and speaking to us today about the censorship that's happening with your political cartoon about Gaza. Thanks so much.
Sean, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate what WMNF does for the community.
Well, that was Bob Whitmore speaking yesterday, and Samar is going to turn off that fader. Thanks, Samar. That was Bob Whitmore speaking yesterday. He was a political cartoonist at Creative Loafing, but out of a job because of criticisms the paper got after it published his cartoon of a starving child in Gaza. You can see that cartoon. It's on WMNF.org. Whitmore told me, dissent against Israel's actions in Gaza should not be considered anti-Semitism. We reached out to Creative Loafing's corporate publisher. We have not gotten a response yet. And in a statement, Creative Loafing Tampa Bay's editor-in-chief Ray Roa said, "For the record, I have been advised by Creative Loafing Tampa Bay's lawyer not to comment on the matter." So I want to thank Samar and True Talk for giving me this time to let our audience hear this interview. If you missed it, you can go to WMNF.org and listen to it again. But thanks, Samar, for having me on True Talk.
Always a pleasure to have you, Sean, on the air. But we did get some email. Let me read this one. It's a voice message, and it says, "Anyone pretending that cartoon is in any way anti-Semitic should be ashamed of themselves for abandoning all common sense and being led around by disingenuous ring in their nose rather than paying any attention to what words actually mean and what's actually happening in that part of the world." Thank you so much. Somebody from cyberspace sent that. And if you have any comments about the cartoon or our show, please send them to dj@wmnf.org. Thank you so much, Sean, for bringing this story to light. And I have looked at it. If you go to wmnf.org, you will be able to see the cartoon. I don't think there is anything really wrong with it, but I have no idea why somebody is upset by it. Let me play this clip from Instagram because I have the person actually who is reading it. This is the final will of journalist Anas Sharif, who was assassinated by Israel. This is the topic that we're going to be talking about. And the person who is reading the will of Anas, his name is Ahmed Bedier, a Palestinian journalist and storyteller. Sorry, Ahmed, you might not be able to listen to your own words, but I'm sure you know them. But let me start playing it. This is Ahmed.
Israel has succeeded in killing me and silencing my voice. First, peace be upon you and Allah's mercy and blessings. Allah knows I gave every effort and all my strength to be a support and a voice for my people ever since I opened my eyes to life in the alleys and streets of the Jabalia refugee camp. My hope was that Allah would extend my life so I could return with my family and loved ones to our original town of occupied Asqalan, Al-Majdal. But Allah's will came first, and His decree is final. I have lived through pain in all its details, tasted suffering and loss many times, yet I never once hesitated to convey the truth as it is, without distortion or falsification, so that Allah may bear witness against those who stayed silent, those who accepted our killing, those who choked our breath and whose hearts were unmoved by the scattered remains of our children and women, doing nothing to stop the massacre that our people have faced for more than a year and a half. I entrust you with Palestine, the jewel in the crown of the Muslim world, the heartbeat of every free person in this world. I entrust you with its people, with its wronged and innocent children who never had the time to dream or live in safety and peace. Their pure bodies were crushed under thousands of tons of Israeli bombs and missiles, torn apart and scattered across walls. I urge you not to let the chains silence you, nor borders restrain you. Be bridges towards the liberation of the land and its people, until the sun of dignity and freedom rises over our stolen homeland. I entrust you to take care of my family. I entrust you with my beloved daughter Sham, the light of my eyes, whom I never got the chance to watch grow up as I had dreamed. I entrust you with my dear son Salah, whom I had wished to support and accompany through life until he grew strong enough to carry my burden and continue the mission. I entrust you with my beloved mother, whose blessed prayers brought me to where I am, whose supplications were my fortress, and whose light guided my path. I pray that Allah grants her strength and rewards her on my behalf with the best of rewards. I also entrust you with my lifelong companion, my beloved wife Salah, Bayan, from whom the war separated me from many long days and months. Yet she remained faithful to our bond, steadfast as the trunk of an olive tree that does not bend, patient, trusting in Allah, and carrying the responsibility in my absence with all her strength and faith. I urge you to stand by them, to be their support after Allah Almighty. If I die steadfast upon my principles. I testify before Allah that I am content with His decree, certain of meeting Him, and assured that what is with Allah is better and everlasting. O Allah, accept me among the martyrs. Forgive my past and future sins, and make my blood a light that illuminates the path of freedom for my people and my family. Forgive me if I have fallen short, and pray for me with mercy, for I kept my promise and never changed or betrayed it.
If you're just joining us, this is True Talk on WMNF 88.5 FM, and you were listening to a reading by Ahmed Shahabuddin. He was talking about the will of Anas al-Sharif, who was assassinated by Israel a few days ago. I'm trying to find the link to Zoom. Ahmed, can you hear me? Okay, I'm not sure why I can't hear Ahmed. But I'm going to be talking to Ahmed Shahabuddin in a few seconds, as soon as I find the link to the Zoom which I can't find it for some weird reason. Join. Okay. Let me. Okay. Let me try and find. This is new to me. Oh gosh, where is it? Okay, I need to go to some music, but I can't even find that part of the music. Where did it go, Sean? I can't find the... everything is that... which one is it?
I don't know.
Okay, we're trying to find... Just bear with us.
Can you hear him still?
No, I can't hear him.
You hung up on him.
Maybe I hang up on him.
Yeah.
He is telling me. Sorry for this technical problem. Yes, we will start now, Ahmed, in a few
Play some
seconds.
music. Can I play?
Yeah, we can play that.
No,
Yeah.
not this. This is not music.
No, we can play this.
Oh, is that music?
Yeah.
He was one of the most recognizable voices reporting from Gaza since
This
the
is from
beginning
Al
of Israel's
Jazeera.
war
Again.
in October 2023. Anas al-Sharif remained in northern Gaza throughout the war, broadcasting even as the Israeli military forcibly ordered more than 1 million Palestinians to leave the area. Born in Jabalia refugee camp on December 3rd, 1996, he graduated with a degree in mass communication from Al-Aqsa University. He became one of the main voices from Gaza's front lines, earning him international acclaim from Amnesty International Australia, honoring his courageous reporting during Israel's ongoing genocide. His live reports and news stories, filmed from smoldering sites, documenting the aftermath of Israeli attacks. Attacks Israel didn't want the world to see.
The reason journalism is so important is that it's one of the ways of holding the Israeli government to account for the mass atrocities being committed in Gaza. If nobody knows, it's easier for Israel to get away with them.
Throughout the war, the 28-year-old father of two paid a high personal price for his commitment to his profession. In December 2023, his father was killed when Israeli forces bombed his family home in Jabalia. He was there, recording moments of agony and elation. When a ceasefire came into effect in January, the homegrown journalists telling Gaza's stories could briefly shed that which gave them a feeling of protection. The joy, short-lived, as Israel broke the ceasefire barely 2 months later in March. In recent weeks, Sharif knew he was a marked man. The Israeli army began its online smear campaign, falsely accusing him of being a Hamas member. Al Jazeera strongly denied those claims. The Committee to Protect Journalists warned his life was in acute danger. They called for which gave them a feeling of protection. The joy, short-lived.
Video MNF, and we're trying to figure out what went wrong with the Zoom link, so just bear with us. Sean and I are trying to figure out this problem. But again, you were just listening to Al Jazeera report. Video MNF, and we're trying to figure out. Are you there? Okay, give me a second, Ahmed. I'm trying to figure out what is wrong with the Zoom. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me, Ahmed? He can't hear me.
Yes, I can.
Oh, you can. Oh, thank God. Thank you, Ahmed. I'm so sorry about this mishap.
No worries.
Probably my problem. Again, we were listening actually to your rendition and your reading of Anas al-Sharif will, and also a report by Al Jazeera about him. So, as I was saying, Ahmed Shihabuddin is a Palestinian-American journalist and storyteller. He was one of the first Arab Americans who worked with the Huffington Post when it was launched, and he did amazing reporting and coverage and highlighted so many issues related to the Arab American and Muslims in the US. Ahmed, who is Anas al-Sharif, and why did Israel assassinate 5 journalists who were in a tent known to the Israeli army, known to the whole world, that they are residing in it and covering what is happening in Gaza from that tent?
It's good to be with you. Anas al-Sharif was among the best journalists that I have come to know through observing, but also, as a former colleague of mine at Al Jazeera. He was relentless in covering this genocide. And, to answer your question very simply and plainly, the impunity that Israel has been afforded, not just since October, but for decades, is why Anas and his colleagues were not only targeted and assassinated, but why there will be no justice. And I hate to put it in such plain terms, but, one day after Israel murdered, as you said, these 5 Al Jazeera journalists, the New York Times published a revolting piece by an Israeli reporter, Efrat Livni, that's littered with unverified Israeli claims, uncritically repeating talking points designed to cast doubt not just on Anas as a Hamas member, but at Al Jazeera's integrity. The only people on the ground in Gaza, of course, because Israel has banned international journalists from reporting. So, this is not something that is operating Israel's ability to kill journalists, doctors, children. Every day, an entire classroom of children is killed by Israel. And the reason they killed, Anas, and the timing may be because they are now planning to do a deeper occupation, a deeper invasion of Gaza, and a deeper detonation of entire neighborhoods to erase the neighborhoods. And he was one of the last reporters. You asked, who is Anas? Anas was young. He was not inexperienced. He was not new or naive. He was no ordinary journalist. He documented the genocide with, as I said, relentless courage, even after Israel killed his own father, his colleagues, and, repeatedly sent him death threats. And so for the day after his murder, for the Times to choose to run an article framing Al Jazeera and Anas and journalists as suspect really just mirrors decades of its sort of linguistic laundering of Israeli state violence.
I want Ahmed just to read the title of the piece in the New York Times so people know what we're talking about. The article that Ahmed is referring to, written by Efrat Livni, What to Know About Al Jazeera, the broadcaster that targeted by Israel. Al Jazeera, 5 of whose reporters the broadcaster said were killed by an Israeli strike, who else would have really bombed them? But anyways, has angered governments across the region that claim it gives voice to terrorists. The outlet denies that. What kind of journalism is that, Ahmed? Like it said that Israel killed them and bombed them. Is there any other force out there working? Are the Jordanians running any raids? Are the Egyptians? Are the Europeans?
Well,
who else is bombing Gaza?
It would be so maddening were it not so perverse how the collusion is working. It's not just between mainstream media, unfortunately, in the West, all over really, and the Israeli government. But this Israel says that you're referring to, that we see littered across media, so-called journalists, are using this to peddle Israeli propaganda. I mean, what kind of journalism is this? The New York Times has long been doing stenography for power. And, it does it through the language of vague neutrality. I mean, how can I put it? This colonial lexicon that is aimed to strip Palestinians of our agency, these headlines that spin Israeli mass murder as defensive necessity, Hamas being blamed for Israel killing civilians, and, this is not accidental. It is deliberate. And, it's worth mentioning the New York Times is not alone, but the New York Times, the paper of record, has a long history of devotion to Zionism, rooted not only in its leadership, but the people that are shaping discourse across the mainstream media. I mean, we saw 45 U.S. journalists go on an Israeli government sort of press junket with paid flights and carefully staged stops at, different so-called aid points where Israelis, of course, are shooting starving Palestinians daily. They are taking journalists on these propaganda trips, the same day that this piece is running in the New York Times. And, again, propaganda is deliberate, it's well-funded, it's well-coordinated, and I don't know how to put it, but the both sides coverage, it's intended to ignore evidence, to bury evidence, even when we see Israeli genocide scholars like Omer Bartov and others, call this what it is, that it meets the legal definition of genocide and then some. So, we're seeing protests that is encouraging against the mainstream media, against governments, and I don't know where we go from here, not just on Palestine. If we don't stand up to this, I really wonder what is to come in the near future for us all.
Ahmed, one of the unique things that happened in the case of Anas is that there was no denial. That actually the military came, the Israeli military came and said, yes, we targeted him, we killed him, and then showed pictures because he took pictures with some Palestinian leaders like Al-Sinwar. But I mean, you are a journalist, I am a journalist. I interviewed, was in a room with Yasser Arafat one time. I was with Edward Shevardnadze. I was with Tariq Aziz when he was the foreign minister of Iraq, and then later he was arrested and put in jail. Does that mean I am a legitimate target because I am doing my job and taking pictures with the people?
Well, who reminds me how to think about this, or who puts it best, is Mohammed al-Kurd. He often talks about this, and he recently wrote about, that's how it should be for all journalists, right? And we know that to be true. Anybody who is a journalist or has worked with a journalist, and yet for Palestinians, to be recognized, forget as a journalist, but as human, you have to be sort of not just unaffiliated. And maybe that's right, but they're treated as legitimate targets. And, this doesn't just divide us by geography. It's like Palestinians are somehow split into acceptable and unacceptable victims beyond journalism. And that's why, Shireen Abu Akleh, who was a U.S. citizen, if somehow, even she didn't have justice or accountability, how can we expect for there to be any accountability?
Can you, Ahmed, just in case our listeners don't know who Shireen Abu Akleh, can you just talk a little bit about her, and how was the reaction of the White House and the State Department when they found out that American journalist was assassinated in Israel?
Well, Shireen was a veteran journalist. She was an American citizen. She was a kind, beautiful person. She was a U.S. citizen. And yet 1,000 days and many, many more since Israeli forces assassinated her, not only has no one been held accountable. This was caught on video. This was dissected by not just the United Nations. There were so many investigations into her killing, and they all found that it was Israeli troops, and yet there was no justice. Her death rightly shocked the world back then, but we've been witnessing, over 230 journalists now murdered, and their families also targeted. I mean, and as you said, there's, with Shireen, Israel at least played their, propaganda playbook of deflecting and lying and denying before eventually acknowledging, of course, without any accountability. I mean, how can I put this? Shireen was not just a household name. Shireen was really the heartbeat of Palestine in many ways, unifying, any voice, anything that unifies the divided, oppressed Palestinian people that Israel is dividing geographically, physically, politically, and has done for decades. Anybody who challenges that, Palestinian or not, journalist or not, look at Francesca Albanese, anybody who tries to use the mechanisms that are available that should be used to hold Israel accountable is eliminated one way or the other. And Shireen, unfortunately, justice, as I said, it's been 3 years now since they killed her. And I hate to say this, but the IFJ, any of the organizations, whether the ICC or the IFJ, that were called on to investigate these killings, any of their findings, as we've seen with the ICJ in Israel, who is going to enforce this? And I think therein lies the problem, and therein lies sort of the U.S. We're on the radio presumably in the U.S. I mean, I hope it's not lost on people, the mayhem, the torture, the Hunger Games, the siege, the starvation, the daily murder of children that the U.S. and its taxpayers are funding and defending and diplomatically shielding Israel from any accountability. I don't know if you saw, I don't want to digress, but UEFA tried to do something when Mohamed Salah called them out.
Mohamed Salah is a famous soccer player who works in England.
Yeah, sorry, I should probably provide some context. I mean, UEFA put a huge banner across their soccer pitch at the Paris Saint-Germain game, and it was, framed as a humanitarian plea. Stop killing children, stop killing civilians, it said. And to me, it's like, this is indicative of the same sort of impunity that allows for Israel to kill journalists, to kill doctors, to kill children, to kill civilians of all kinds. You see this televised virtue signal for millions of people, but the gesture, which was done just before the game in Italy, was really just obscene in what it emitted. Much like the New York Times and mainstream media omits the perpetrator from headlines and articles about, countless war crimes, UEFA did the exact same thing. I mean, it's a statement in passive voice that's vague, and it erases the subject of the killing. Just days before, Suleiman al-Ubaid, who's the Palestinian Pele, was killed by Israeli forces while he was waiting for aid to feed his starving family. And UEFA posted a farewell tribute that avoided stating the basics, how, where, and why he died, right? And so that's when Mohamed Salah, like this, huge soccer figure and star, asked, can you tell us how he died? And then we see this, PR machine, just like the New York Times in the case of, killings of journalists. I don't want to keep talking about the New York Times. I am appalled. We're all appalled. And any journalist worth their salt, worth anything, should be appalled by the silence, the collective silence, as our colleagues are being sought out, targeted, and assassinated. So, for UEFA to bring out these young Palestinian children to stand on the pitch and, to hold this banner on the field, it's using such a tragedy, genocide, the ultimate crime in the international system, the trauma of these people. It's using it as what? Decoration? We're sanitizing the image?
Actually,
what is yeah.
Actually, Ahmed, sorry to interrupt you, but it's as if they, by omission, they might be following the footsteps of Netanyahu, who says, these buildings, Hamas blew them up. The starvation, Hamas steals the food. So, the children are being killed. It's Hamas that's killing them. This is how I felt.
Yeah, and when I go on other programs on mainstream organizations, even on Al Arabiya, other Arab channels, this is what I'm faced with. They platform and bring on people who blame it entirely on Hamas. And they blame everything on Hamas, which is so it's so reductive and so naive that even children know that to not be a valid argument. I mean, let's not forget that much like the New York Times and European
BBC,
government,
probably also.
yeah, but the UEFA, all these institutions, all these sort of global powers have shown that they can act, right? And in 2022, there was a sweeping ban on all Russian clubs and national teams after the invasion of Ukraine. So the precedent makes the current double standard for UEFA, for the New York Times, for European governments, for Ursula von der Leyen, impossible to explain away as sort of, in the context of sports being apolitical. But Israel's killed 60,000 Palestinians at least, if not many, many more. They've killed at least 19,000 children. I mean, we know that what Israel's doing is wrong, and yet we're seeing a systemic, deliberate attempt by Western sports bodies, by governments, by media, at this selective outrage that, is very loud when civilian massacres happen in Ukraine. There are loud headlines followed by immediate sanctions. When they happen in Gaza, when children are starving on a daily basis for months and months on end, when hundreds of people are dying of hunger, of a man-made famine, or killed waiting in a line for bread, as more than 1,500 Palestinians have been killed by Israel and U.S. mercenaries. I mean, it's silence. Otherwise, as we've seen, it's sanitized sort of tributes. And the way that Israel's owning war crimes, like the crime of killing a journalist, regardless of his, alleged affiliation, which has not been proven, no evidence. So
what about the other four who happened to be in the tent? Let's say he was. How can you kill 4 more people with him? All are fathers and brothers and sons of people who have loved ones and wives and aunts and uncles.
I mean, look, Muhammad and the other Muhammad and Ibrahim, not only do they have families, but, these people, who included, by the way, I should say, freelance journalists, they're doing their hardest to keep the world aware of Israel and what it's doing inside of its occupied territories. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to couple the fact that Israel has banned all international, not just journalists, but any sort of, observers, and also been systematically killing any that are on the ground already, many of whom happen to work for Al Jazeera. And when you couple those two things together, the intent is clear, much like the genocidal intent is clear. If you look at Israeli press alone, forget the West, forget Europe and the US, it is clear. If you look at Israeli leading human rights organizations, everyone is screaming loud that this is a genocide. So, the question really becomes, what do we not want to believe? The facts are there. And that's what makes Anes's death so painful, because Anes not only shouldn't have had to have given his life to this, but Anes was someone who kept all of us aware. And there's been a noticeable vacuum since his killing and the killing of his crew. That's not an accident.
Let me just remind our listeners that they're listening to True Talk on WMNF 88.5 FM. I'm talking to Palestinian-American journalist Ahmed Bedier, who is also a storyteller, and we're talking about the assassination that happened on August 10 when Israel assassinated the 5 Palestinian journalists working in Gaza. Ahmed, what what we're witnessing in the streets of Europe, New York, everywhere in America, even if you look at the latest two congressional meetings with constituents, one was like for Democrats and one was for Republicans, there are older people. I'm not talking college students. I'm not talking young people who go to TikTok and to all these apps and they know what's going on. No, I'm talking about people screaming their lungs out. People who have white hair, old men and women saying, say it, it's a genocide. What's going on in Palestine is genocide. Say it. I don't know if you have seen it. So obviously there is some truth coming out. Mm-hmm. Is it all alternative media like our station here, WMNF, that the government is cutting funds to? Like, is there hope?
Yeah, there is hope. There is always hope. I spoke to Gabor Mate on my podcast recently, and, hope is inside of us. And I know that sounds cheesy and vague, but what I mean is, there is not a minority that is outraged and wants this to stop and wants the U.S. government, the Trump administration to stop. There's more of us in the U.S. and all over the world, but particularly in the U.S., it's not just youth, as you said. There's been huge shifts in support for not the Palestinian cause, but the Palestinian people, the actual people, right? And people are starting to wake up to years of not just propaganda, but indoctrination. We have a government that is, more than 80% of Congress, maybe even 90%, are being lobbied by a foreign government. And I hope these facts are becoming so well known and so normalized that I think Americans are starting to ask themselves the right question. And I think the anger and the rage is palpable beyond just identity groups that were previously affiliated with Palestine. So it's not just old people, as you're saying, it's Black people, it's Jewish, more and more Jewish people. It's the intersectional aspect of this movement is also undeniably changing dramatically. And, we have to remember that, we do have a voice, and I think people are starting to draw connections between some of the systems of oppression like Palantir and other sort of corporations who have contracts with the government that are doing nefarious things that curtail on our civil liberties, and how these same corporations are fueling very directly, technologically, and with energy and weapons, the genocide in Gaza. And it's really a genocide in the West Bank too. It's just neglected to be reported in the West. So I hope before it's too late, I think there is hope. I think, Trump is someone who can be persuaded, if not for moral reasons, for, reasons that appeal to his ego. And I think that's, maybe the cost-benefit analysis for him can be shifted, even as he is an oppressor.
Yeah. Ahmed, before you came on the show, we played a segment that our news director did, and it was about a cartoonist here in Tampa who did a cartoon, and you can go to wmnf.org and see it. It's a child in front of a wall, and there is barbed wire, and then behind the barbed wire there is the flag of Israel, and on the left there it says Wailing Wall, and then the child has a saying that says, I think, give me food, something like that. He was fired. So unfortunately, you mentioned, you didn't mention AIPAC, but you mentioned their ability to elect people and to finance it. Unfortunately, there are people who are influential out there that can ruin the lives of journalists. Maybe this is why there is fear that why I don't want to touch this story. This story, I will either be labeled as anti-Semitic or I'll be fired. And I do have a new mortgage and a new house. And how can one go around these things? Is it just we have to depend on alternative media?
I think, honestly,
we have
I
like
don't
30 seconds.
Yeah,
Sorry.
to put it shortly, I think in this day and age, you have to find people who you trust and who are consistent. And those voices are fewer and fewer in the mainstream. And they're more and more on platforms that are independent, whether Democracy Now!, Dropsite News, Iteo, not just on Palestine, but on so many things.
Thank you. Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you so much. And sorry about the beginning of the show.
No, don't worry.
Thank you.
I'm glad to join you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much. This was Ahmed Shahabuddin on True Talk. And thank you so much for listening and tuning in. And I'll see you next week, inshallah. If you have any comments, please send them to dj@wmnf.org. And sorry for the phone call. I did not take it, but I think the scoop is now.